Hey guys, I'm glad you could make it. So let me see if I can set the camera up where you can see. Yeah, happy April Fool's Day. Totally forgot about that. I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of April Fool's jokes today. All right, so here's my empty canvas. And I'm going to be painting a bird. And so I normally use my laptop for a reference image. So I'm going to use, I've got an old iPad. I'm going to use an iPad for my reference image. I'm going to be painting this bird. And I made it black and white. So I'm only going to be painting in black and white today. So I've got one of these palettes. Sometimes I use a transparent piece of glass, but this is just a disposable palette pad. You can find a lot of these at any art supply store. Michael's. I go to Dick Blick, where I get all the stuff for school. And then because my reference image is horizontal, I also need to turn my canvas horizontally. All right, let me set myself up here. All right, so I got this, got my canvas set up. Who's that? Hey. All right. Let's get started. So I'm gonna need some black and white. Get my paint. Some black, just a little bit more black. I don't need a whole lot to begin with. I'll probably need a lot more white. So I tried looking up a way to add music on here. I'm still learning how to use YouTube and create videos. So if I can figure out a way to add music to this, I will. But for right now, all right. I've also got I've got this cup full of water, and I've got a palette knife too. I've got a few different brushes here. Some are thick, some are thin, some are rounded. And so I'm going to be using those throughout the painting process. And then I've got an old t-shirt that I use for a rag too. So really that's all I need. The next step I'm going to do is I need to create my preliminary drawing. So just like I teach you guys, I'm going to start with simple shapes. Let me get my reference image. This is going to be kind of tricky. I've got so many things to hold. All right, let's see. All right, so I can get stuck on making details perfect. So I'm going to kind of move quickly here. If I can finish it, maybe I'll give myself a challenge. I'll try and finish it today, but if I don't, I can finish another time. All right, so if I look at my reference image here, it's kind of tough to see because the background is black. Let's see if you guys can see it. So I see an oval shape for the body here. So I'm going to start with that. And if I have to place the body on my canvas, if I look on my screen, the edge of the body touches about where the halfway point on my canvas is. So right about here. So I'm going to make a little line. Divide my canvas in half here, just kind of lightly. All right. Then I'm going to draw the oval for the body. Let's see, and just about the halfway point here. I'm kind of measuring things. If you've ever seen really old cartoons where cartoon characters would use their thumb like this and they're painting something or they're drawing something, that's a tool, a strategy that artists use to measure things. If they're looking at something in real life or if they're looking at a reference image, you can kind of use the tip of your thumb to measure, all right, how many tips of my thumb high as an object, and you can apply that to your canvas or whatever drawing surface you're working on. All right. So just kind of loosely adding my shapes here. And, you know, if I were doing this, if this were a project that I were taking more time on, I might even start with a pencil too and spend a little bit more time on the preliminary drawing first. But because I want to get rolling here, I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit through this process. All right, so the breast of the bird is beyond the halfway point here. The head's going to come up here. The head is also, what I see here is kind of an oval shape and then a triangular shape for the beak. And then I'm probably going to have to make adjustments too as I go. There we go. I hope you guys are doing well at home, finding some things to work on or pursue while you're at home. I kind of feel like Bob Ross right now. So every now and then I'll take a look at the chat, and if you guys have questions, I'll try and respond to them. So I'll just kind of be going back and forth. Yeah, I know some of you also have a conflict with this time too. So if you need to be in like math or another class, that's totally fine. I plan on painting today for an hour or two. This is my first time doing an online stream, so we'll just see how it goes. All right, so this is just kind of a loose sketch of my reference image so far. So these are the main shapes that I see so far. So now I'm going to separate two. If I look at my reference image, I've got some gray areas and some white areas where the feathers change colors. So I'm going to work on that next. All right. So this would be the beak. Eye is going to be right about here. Here's the underside of the beak. You know, normally when I paint, I do have some music on. That's kind of a fun thing to do. So if you guys ever make art at home, I love listening to music while I paint or draw. All right. All right, so that's kind of a loose placement of the different colors of the feathers. Okay. Now I'm going to block in some things. So I'm going to move kind of quickly here with some, let me show you my palette real quick. So this is all I have on it so far. Some white. I'm going to start creating some different values here so my students know. Values are the range of light and dark. With just black and white, it's going to be different shades of gray. Let's open up the blinds here a little bit. All right, so let's see here. I know I've got some whites, so not quite pure white, but mostly white. So I'm working with acrylic, by the way. I'm going to make something a little bit darker than that. And then I'm also going to be mixing as I go. So these values aren't going to satisfy everything that I need in my painting, but These will probably be the major values that I'll use throughout. And then if I need something else, I can just kind of mix it. I'm going to make something pretty dark, but not quite as dark as black. These are going to be my 3 main values. Let me try turning on the light. It's kind of dark in here. That didn't help much. It's a little bit better. All right, so 3 main values. And then maybe just one more, just for fun. This looks just like that one, actually. All right. Now I'm going to work on the background a little bit. The backgrounds are fun. In my reference image, it's just kind of have fun with being expressive in the background. Let's see if I can put my... I don't know if that's going to work. And then adding color to the background is also an opportunity for me to change the shape of the bird too. So if I notice that something needs to be changed, I can use my background as a way to make some changes too. Bye, Shane. So I hope you guys have made some opportunities to create work, whether it's been through the Google Classrooms or if you've been pursuing something on your own. It's also a good opportunity if you're interested in something else and learning something too. This is a Hey, Christy. I have to be really careful because I've definitely been painting before, and I'll kind of push it and it'll fall down. Or if I'm painting up here, if I kind of adjust it just to make sure it's secure there, because I can forget about that. All right, I'm going to keep a little bit of a margin, some space around the outside edge of the bird. I'm probably going to block that in later. That means come back to it and define the shapes a little bit more, because I bet I'm going to make a few mistakes today. So I'm planning on that. I'm planning on making my mistakes. And this white space around the edge of the bird will allow me to fix some of those mistakes or incorporate those into the painting. Even if I were to put the black line all the way here, see how there's a little bit of space there? I can still fix that, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of a space for now. We'll see how that works. So something else that I read about when working with acrylic painting, acrylic can dry pretty quick. So if you have a spray bottle, and then as you're mixing your different values on your palette, you can spritz them. You can also do, I've seen some people online when they work, they kind of spritz their painting too. And that'll keep your paint workable as you go. You still have to work faster than you would with other mediums, but it gives you a little bit more time. So I was gonna wear my Bob Ross wig today, just for fun, but I couldn't find it. I think I got rid of that. So I'm on the market for a new one. If you do use water with your acrylic paints, you don't want to water them down too much. It can cause them to be transparent, and it can affect your colors a little bit too. So you just want to use a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of white here and there, just to give it something more than just black in certain areas. And I might come back later too. I'll probably come back later to the background and add a little bit more. All right, let me grab some more paint real quick. All right. Let me take a minute here to look at the chat. Thanks, Leopard Fang. Hello. Hey, Luca. Thanks, guys, for coming in. Let's make sure we can see this. There we go. All right. So and then I'm going to switch brushes and start adding some textures, some separate values. I noticed here, it's kind of tough to see. It's tough to see on your screen, I think. This is a dark gray, and this is a white. I'm not going to use pure white here, and I'm not going to use a really dark gray here, but I'm going to use a darker value here and a lighter value here, and then I'm going to go in and add some textures in those areas. So something close to white. I think the white that I mixed earlier, that looks a little bit too bright for what I need. So I'm going to add, let's see, I have some black in my brush already from the background. I'm going to mix that in with the white that I just put on my palette to make a light gray. And I'm going to paint this in the areas that I think should be white in the painting. All right, so kind of under the beak here. I need to be careful with this brush because it puts on a pretty thick layer of paint, and with my first few layers of paint, I don't want them to be too thick. And the reason for that is I usually have to make changes to my first few layers, and the more thick the paint is, the more opaque it usually is, and it's tougher to cover up any mistakes or things that I want to change. So it's just more time consuming if you put on a thick layer first. I'm going to keep this one kind of light. Just adding a light gray to this. This kind of comes down at an angle here. I've got some feathers protruding out. They really stand out because the feathers behind them are really dark. So again, even when I'm moving beyond using simple shapes to create the preliminary painting and drawing, I'm still sticking with keeping things simple here for me. I'm just focusing on 2 values at first, and then I'll go in and add more textures and details. I'll also add this value to the eye. And then I'm going to create here on my palette just a slightly darker value for the beak. And the whole time I'm painting this, I know that what I'm making now might change. The shapes might change a little bit. I know I'm definitely going to have to change the values. So I'm not married. I'm not stuck on keeping these in my painting. You know, the whole process for me is kind of a series of changes until I feel like I'm close to being done. And even that's a skill. Sometimes I'm not sure yet. Sometimes I have to give that some time to decide if I think it's finished or not. So what I really focus on is just the process. I just focus on the work as I'm working. And that can be really helpful too. It's a good stress reliever. Takes your mind off things. All right. There we go. All right, so those are the lighter areas. I might need to add a little bit more in here. Another thing I look at too is the negative shape. So if I look at this shape, instead of looking at the shape of the bird, if I look at the shape of the black around the bird, and I'm going to look at the shape that I have next to my bird here, even though my black ends here, I can still tell where that margin of space is here, what that shape is going to look like. And it's looking pretty close. I may have to change this area. Let me take a look at that real quick. I feel like it's less of a, it's not as steep. All right, that's not too bad. Okay, next, I'm gonna add the dark gray to this part. It needs to be lighter than my background. It's kind of tough to see on your screen. I know it's kind of reflective here, but it's gonna be dark, but not that dark. So I think what I have on my palette I can use already. So this is what I have so far. I'm going to need to mix some more. Add a little bit of black. I'm going to add some white here. And so typically I'll use a palette knife to mix several different values. I'm moving at a faster rate than I normally would when I paint. Doing things a little bit differently for sake of the video, but it's fun. It's fun to try something new and challenge myself. Hey, Tejas. All right, so gray. All right, I'm gonna add my gray here. This is looking a lot lighter than what I think I'll actually need. But let's go with it. All right, so this is a good opportunity for me to visit and define the shape of the bird. So I might have to switch brushes. The bristles on this brush are more flexible than what I think I need right now. So I'm gonna put this to the side. I'm gonna grab some bristles that are more coarse, less flexible, because I want to control it more like probably like a pencil. These feel pretty good. So I'm kind of testing the bristles first before I grab them. I'm going to use the paint that's on my brush first, so I know all this is going to be dark. Go ahead and get that off because I need to wash this. Okay. All right. So I'll probably have to change this, but so I'm noticing in my reference image here that some of the feathers break the silhouette of the bird up from being just a smooth, graceful line to kind of geometric, angular. These little tips of feathers that break out here from the pack, and then the rest of the shape of the bird is pretty smooth. So now I was able to create the silhouette with this brush. I can now go back with the thicker brush and lay down some larger strokes. I may have to revisit this area. I feel like there's more of a hump there. Maybe something like that. A few more of these guys. Okay. I'm gonna see what that looks like. I'm gonna, now I have something closer to what I want. I'm gonna add some of my background color. I'm gonna come back over that area. And sometimes too, what I'll have to do is take a step away from the painting itself and look. And it's tough to see the relationship of all your shapes until you back away and look at it from a few feet. And then you might be able to notice some things that need to change a little bit. It looks differently when you're looking here as opposed to a few feet away. All right, just defining the outside edge of the bird here. So I'm using my hand to kind of steady. I've noticed that some artists use like really long poles. They'll attach their pole to the top of their easel or to the frame of the easel. Any way you can steady your hand. I'm going to leave some white space around the beak here because I haven't. I'm not too sure about the shape and size of the beak yet. I feel like it's pretty close, but I may have to make some adjustments. So I'm going to give myself some insurance there, some flexibility. Leave just a little bit of space around the beak. The bird, and if I need to make any adjustments to it. So I think we have some friends that weren't able to watch the video. I know some classes are happening right now. I'm going to try and see. I'm still learning how to use YouTube. I'm going to try and see if I can save and record this video and then share it with everyone, so that if you weren't able to access the live stream or you had something going on during that time, you can watch it later if you want to. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I want to take one more look at this area just to make sure So I feel like this goes in a little bit more if I look at the halfway point here, and there's the halfway point here. I think this goes in a little bit more like that. And then one thing that changes the shape here are some tips of feathers that come down. I'll add those after. I'll add those a little bit later. And same thing up here. I don't think this shape, the shape of the bird, the positive shape follows that shape. So I need to adjust that just a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of white here. So a little bit of a curve there. Yeah. That's pretty straight. This is kind of where the feathers end. And if I'm just looking here, it looks like the top portion of the beak might be a little too tall. So I'm going to change that just a little bit. And here in a few minutes, I'll take a break, take a look at the chat if you have any questions, and take a break for a few minutes before I continue working. So I think this is a good opportunity for me to balance my hand against something so I can create a straight line here. There we go. That's looking better. And the great thing about paint is you can always go back to fix your mistakes, and sometimes it may just take 20 minutes. You know, give your paint some time to dry. And then go back to it. All right, not too bad. All right, getting closer. All right, I need to finish up adding some gray to this area, some darker gray. And you know what? I'm going to switch to my larger brush for this. That way I can put plenty of paint down before continuing. Also drinking some coffee this morning. So I waited. I tried to time it so that I could drink my coffee and paint. I'm going to need to mix some more of this darker gray value. I'm not a big fan of this brush. It's a little too flexible. I like something with a little more rigidity, something that's a little stiffer, but it's nice and big. I usually don't spend a lot of money on brushes. I get kind of the cheapo ones, and then, you know, a lot of times after I finish a painting or two, I'll just throw them away. But that is something I'm interested in, maybe learning a little bit more about. Taking care of brushes and keeping them for a little bit longer. All right, so you'll notice some of the values are changing here. I'm just simplifying some of the values I see in my reference image. They're all darker than this area, but some areas are a little bit lighter than that dark gray. Some areas are kind of a darker gray here. Um, let me keep working. Let's keep my hand moving. Well, the black and white painting, I typically would use more, I feel like I use more white than I do black, because in my experience, black is such a strong color that you use a lot more white to create the shades of gray than you do black. You don't need to add much black to darken a color or to create a gray, but I typically use more white. Let's take a little break and then I'll come right back. So what you're not seeing on the screen is I'm mixing. I've still got my 3 basic values, but I'm also mixing. I'm having to mix. I'll run out of a certain value. I'll come back to that area and remix. So also I was doing some research on reference images because I love to find good reference images. And I got this reference image from a website that provides artists access to different images of different things that are copyright free. So that's one thing that's worth looking into if you like painting, if you're interested in art, and you like painting pictures or drawing pictures of animals, and you do it a lot. Is make sure you credit the artist, the photographer, if you find a picture you like. And then look into ways that you can use reference images that are copyright free, because these are also images that other artists created. They photographed or created themselves. All right, guys, I'm going to take a break here just for a minute. I'll take a look at the questions. While I'm gone, I'm going to spritz. Whoops. I'm going to spritz my painting, and I spritz my palette. And I'll be right back. Be back in 2 minutes. right. Let me take a look at the questions here. Anyone have any? Yeah. So on the thumbnail for the stream, that's a bulldog painting I'm working on. That's my mom. She's a huge Bulldogs fan. So here's the bulldog painting. And so that's taken me a little bit. The black and white paintings are fun because I feel more comfortable with painting in black and white. Color, it takes a little bit longer for me to create the right values and to mix the right colors. And yeah, so this painting is a bird painting. Yep. All right, and we had some friends too that weren't able to join, so I'm gonna see if I can record this video and then send it out to people so they can watch it later. And then I'll ask Tom too if there's a way we can get everyone to access the live streams. I know quite a few people have tried to join, but they're not able to for some reason. It says video restricted, so this is my first time trying this, so I'm gonna ask Tom if he knows of any way to help people. All right, I'm gonna keep going here. All right, here's my bird painting. There's my bird reference image. So there's a lighter value here in the wing. I'm gonna adjust that a little bit because I think the darker value actually goes. Yeah, so you can see how I work on my artwork at home, getting out of my comfort zone a little bit and trying something new. And just wanted to get some FaceTime with everyone. So it's tough. I'm trying to keep my paint flat here, but I noticed that in some areas it's a little raised off of the surface of the canvas. So now I'm adding some darker values where I see them. I'm gonna have to, all this is adding some darker values here and there. I think this part needs to be raised a little bit more, and the shape needs to be changed just a little bit. This needs to be darker too. So now I'm just using pure black, but it's not going to show up as pure black because once it mixes with the paint that's on the canvas, it'll appear a little bit lighter. Also, paints just out of the tube are pretty translucent, meaning you can see through them more. So by mixing different values, by adding white and black to them, they'll be more opaque. And you'll have to, then you can use less layers of paint. So with acrylic, I end up painting with a lot of different layers. If I mix my values, I end up not having to use quite as many layers. All right. I need a lighter value for the feathers underneath the beak here. So here's the beak, the bottom part of the beak, and then underneath the beak are some lighter feathers. But I think what I need to do is switch my brushes because those textures are pretty small. And if I look at the tip of this brush, it's a pretty thick brush. It's a squared brush, so it's not quite the shape I need. I need a brush with a tip. Let me see what I got. So something like this brush is actually a little dry. So I think I've used it previously and some paint has dried on it, but that might work. It's not as flexible as the other brushes. All right. Got my lighter value here. Trying to find a dry area where I can plant my wrist here. Creating the textures of the feathers. So I'm lifting my paintbrush each time I create a texture. Here's the edge. That's where the bristles are going to start. This is the beak, and this defines where the feathers start. And because I'm adding a lighter value on a darker value, the texture of the feathers should show up more. I'll probably come back and refine these a little bit more, but they're a good placeholder for where I want the feathers to be. All right. This is lighter here. Oh, you can see where my background isn't totally dry. And if I mix, if my lighter paint touches the black paint in the background, it's going to mix to make a gray, which I don't want. So I'm going to come back to this in a second. What I can work on next, I can start adding some values in the beak. So these are a little bit lighter. Got to be really careful next to my background. I'm going to go ahead and add the pupil here. It's not as dark as it needs to be. Then there's a ring around it. And it's okay if my ring isn't uniform, because when I add the other values around it, I can correct the line itself. And then around that dark ring is a light ring, especially over here. This should be a little bit darker. And there's kind of a lighter gray around the eye, around the pupil. All right, and just going to add this. It's a little early to add it, but I always like doing it. Some white reflective parts in the eye, the highlights. I need to come back and work on the eye a little bit more later, but I'm going to leave all the shapes there for now and come back later. So that's one thing to think about too if you work on a painting at home, is you want to work on the whole painting and not just focus on one particular area. So try and distribute your work and effort across the whole painting. So work a little bit here, work on the background, then come back to the bird and work on the different parts of the bird, and then keep working on the painting as a whole. All right. Where can I go next? Okay, so I notice in the white area of the bird, it starts to get a little bit darker down here and lighter up here. So it kind of goes from a middle value coming up to a lighter value, especially here. And then it gets a little bit darker. It's still pretty light, but if I stay in this shape, it's going to go middle, medium to light, and then darker down here. So I'm going to work on adding some of those values now. I'm going to stick with this brush. I'm really liking it so far. Let's see what my middle values look like. Let's see what this is going to look like. I think here. Ooh, that's pretty dark. Whoops. I'm going to wipe that off on my palette and load my brush with some white. It's still going to be dark, but I don't want it to be that dark. That's a little bit better. There we go. And so the direction of my strokes can also imply texture and feathers too. Loading my brush with some more white. I've still got black on the brush. So if I press down really hard, I can get this much paint on there, but I want the white areas to show up. So I'm gonna put more white on there first, and then I'm putting my lighter value on top of that. Now, as I come down here, I can start to remove the darker paint that's within the bristles of the brush to create the darker values down here. I'm also going to mix. I'm going to use this. This is the same value that I used in the dark parts on the other side of the bird's body. I'm going to put that down here, and then I'm going to immediately load my brush with some white so that I can mix that middle value that I need here. I can lighten that up. It should still be lighter than what I have. Yeah, this needs to be lighter than that, but darker than what's up here. There we go. And I can, should be able to see that immediately. This is lighter than that. They're close, but it's definitely lighter. I'm going to add some of the tips of the feathers that I see in the painting, just using kind of a gestural mark, lifting my brush. And I've got a few that go into the darker areas too here. There's one up here, it gets a little bit lighter. There's a few here. There's some over here. And again, keeping in the mindset that I'll probably, all right. So that's too. Number just a little bit more. Just a little bit. And I'll work for another. All right, so first thing, I'm going to increase the size of this. Okay, now for the size of the head, I can just add my black to the background to correct that. You take one more look from a distance and see what else I need to change. Change this. This needs to come out a little bit more. Yeah, that's a little bit better. I'm going to work on the beak next. So my value needs to be a little bit. And the top portion of the beak also needs to. That's better. I think I'm. Use some pure white here and start adding some lighter values in the feathers underneath and beside the beak. Really bright. I usually plan on adding multiple layers. It gets there eventually. And my white might not be as opaque. There might be more opaque whites that you can purchase that will lay on top of the other colors a little bit better. I'm just going to work with what I have. Getting there slowly but surely. Lighter value here. I need to plant my wrist for this. It's not quite as bright, but maybe as it lays on top of those darker values, it'll darken up a little bit. There we go. That's looking good. I had some dark paint on my brush. I didn't mean to put that on there. It's okay though. But I'm going to put some of this down to remind me to come back to this. And what I'm doing right now is it's kind of scumbling where there's barely anything in my brush, and I'm just kind of wiping it to create a light layer on top. Let's see, we got some darker value here. This is pretty dark in this area. I can make that even darker. Again until maybe I'll set up another live session. And then each live session, I'll just continue working on this. All right, everyone. So that's what I have so far. Stable, but I'm going to end it now. I just want to say thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Bye, guys.